Good morning, everyone. My name is Steve Tabrizi. I am Chief Operating Officer with Remax Hallmark Group of Company. Welcome to second quarter of the 2021 market report presentation. We will go through a complete survey of the last 6 months in 2021, what has happened during the COVID and coming out of the COVID. Let me start by sharing my screen and we will start. So let me briefly, because there are some other people outside of our company on this call, share with you regarding our company. Remax Hallmark has been in the business since 1980. We operate across Ontario from the eastern boundary of the Ottawa, all the way through Kingston, through Prince Edward County, Quinte, Northumberland, Durham, City of Toronto, York Region, and Simcoe County. And also we have practitioners that practice in the western part of the Ontario, such as Guelph and Cambridge. And soon we will expand our operation in the western part of the province of the Ontario. We do have about 35 offices across Ontario. And last year we did about 23,500 transactions and volume of almost about $13 billion in transaction. We do have about over 1,700 practitioners that practice in Ontario. Our market report is based on the independent research by a Hallmark team and also resources through reliable, such as financial institution, Canada Stats, and also other sources that we communicate effectively through the course of the year. Today, we will cover 5 areas. We cover factors that influence demand in 2021 and why we have such a robust market in the first quarter of the 2021. We also take a look at the properties activities, what happened with respect of the type of asset. We look at, again, at the law of the supply and demand. We look at the rebound of the condo market, particularly the investor behavior. And we look at the most important question in recent days, is the market is cooling off or is the market is aiming for a big correction or adjustment? So let's begin by understanding what happened at the beginning of the 2021 and what factor that influenced the demand in 2021. So the number one demand continuous from the 2020 was the interest rate. Bank of Canada, in order to infuse the confidence among the consumers, kept the interest rate quite low, didn't make any monetary changes. And we strongly also believe it will continue to have the same low interest rate for the remainder of the 2021. The second factor was Ontario labor market. So Ontario labor market from a double digit in 2020 dropped to a single digit, which is currently based on the rebound. The latest stats is not out yet. This stat is as of the May of the 2021 and is sitting at about the 9.6% in Toronto. And overall in Ontario is sitting at about 8.2%. We do believe with the reopening of the economy, perhaps the unemployment rate will be lower and we will sit something around 7 to 7.5% by the end of the 2021. The other major factor for very robust market was the household network. During the year of the 2020 and during the course of the pandemic, many of consumers, they work from home, they did not travel, there was no spending money on social gathering, there was no retail shopping, therefore there was a net gain of the disposable cash, almost anywhere in the range of the 9 to 15%. And consumer confidence based on those 3 factors was quite high. Consumers' confidence regarding buying properties in Ontario, in Canada, was sitting at a high of almost about 65 to 70%. So what happened with those factors? Basically, consumers start thinking this is the best time, the best opportunity to buy the properties. And the question became big cities versus small cities, what is right for you, what is right for the consumers. And that was the behavior and the pattern of the consumers for the first quarter of the 2021, and a continuation to some degree for the second quarter of the 2021. So what are the core demand in terms of that behavior and habit? Obviously, the increased percentage in the population, even in the first quarter of the 2021, for the first time in last 15 months, we noticed the increase in the migration by almost 35,000 in Ontario. And we also noticed slight increase in a net change in non-permanent residents. The non-permanent residents are the international students or the international worker that they are start coming back to Canada. And we also notice a negative net interprovincial migration. Prior to COVID, we had quite a robust interprovincial migration from other provinces coming to Canada. But unfortunately, in the last 15 months, due to lockdown of the provinces among each other, there was hardly any of that migration coming to Canada. But growth of the population is one of the biggest factor in decision making in Ontario currently and will be in the future. Supply and demand, this has been a big topic. So buyers, they basically were looking at where do they have the advantage of to being on a buyer advantage, because across Ontario currently the market is a seller market. So prior to probably 2021, there were certain markets, the smaller town, the smaller urban center, there was a balanced market. And that was one of also a biggest decision factor in terms of moving to a smaller urban center and moving away from a Toronto or GTA core. And if you want to take a look at the comparison of the cost of the living, we did this comparison between, let's say, Toronto and Ottawa. And if you consider the housing, transportation, food, and childcare, we noticed basically about 16.4% lower income, lower cost of carrying in Ottawa versus the Toronto. So, and that's basically was the final caveat in terms of making the decision going to a smaller urban center. So migration, we talk about it. We had a net gain of almost about 70,000 migration coming to the Toronto and 113,000 people going outside of the Toronto. So if you take a look at what happened, ultimately, we notice a robust suburb and a smaller market and urban center that the value of their properties became above $500,000 on average. Prior to the year of 2000, in the entire province of Ontario, if you break it by 20 district or 20 region, you had probably 2 to 3 district that they had the properties above the 500,000. Right now, since pandemic, almost entire 20 region average price of the properties is sitting above $500,000. So based on that activities that happen in the province, guess what happened? So in 2021, we had a very robust activities in land. If you compare it to 2020, we had robust activities even in retail, because even the retail sector realized that due to the vaccine rollout, there is a confidence of the coming back and reopening of the retail industry in a short coming weeks or months. Industrial warehousing, which is provide a key factor for servicing industry, had the biggest jump. We had also a growth in apartment, particularly rental and multi-residential building, and also pre-construction of the condominium. Even the hotel industry was really didn't had a major effect compared to 2020. It had a slight decline, but it still was sustained. So all because of mainly the confidence of the consumers and the labor market. Those two factors were the biggest caveat of the making sustainable economy and making our market completely be sustainable through the first 6 months of the 2021. So office sublet availability in the commercial sector also had a rebound. If you look at the city of the Toronto and Ottawa, The biggest jump was in Ottawa, which demonstrate that businesses are retooling themselves and getting ready to going back to work and perhaps work from the physical premises. This is all started at the beginning of the Q 2021, and it will continue to Q 2020, Q2 of the 2021, and perhaps even continuation of the rest of the year. So if you look at the law of the supply and demand, prior to what was bought by 2020, perhaps prior to the pandemic, concentration in a many part of the Ontario, Barrie, London, Hamilton, and Toronto. You can see the segment of the detached versus apartment and semi-townhouses is decreasing, and you can see it's a positive gain. It is smaller, higher density construction. Basically, it talks about the affordability and the cause why the developer are more gearing up building smaller unit, smaller houses, semi or townhouses, and based on the affordability rate that the currently Ontarian can pay, and that will be the future of the landscape of the development and construction in Ontario. The detached homes in many part of the Ontario on a average larger scale of the urban center are becoming really expensive, and perhaps is not a choice for the many of the first-time buyers. So we had probably by the second or third quarter of the 2020, we had a really steep decline of the pre-construction or condominium market. We had also drop in drastically in the rental market. Urbanation has done a fantastic survey. They are a company that they compile a report based on a pre-construction. And as you can see from the beginning of the perhaps the Q4 of the 20 and early part of the Q1 of the 2021, we had a very sharp increase in pre-construction activities. Right now, the price, average price in Toronto market of average pre-construction properties are sitting at about $1,400 per square foot. In the province of Ontario, the average pre-construction in the province, because it's a little bit of skewed because of the Toronto, is sitting at about $900 per square foot. In many part of the province, such as Ottawa, such as even Barrie and Simcoe County, we have seen a great growth of the pre-construction development. It's happening because, as we discuss on the law of the supply and the demand, the gear is shifting towards the properties that they have to be affordable and built by the developer, that they are more affordable in that area. If you take a look at the absorption rate is, and the new launches absorption rate is almost 76%. And the unsold new condo inventory currently is sitting at about a 12,000 unit. So it is really balancing off, and we will see, we will predict actually within the next quarter and probably by the end of the 2021, that also new inventory level will drop and the absorption rate will continue at a 76% or perhaps even higher. So what's happening in the market, the gap between the detached or freehold or semi or townhouses prices versus the condominium is expanding. And once that gap is expanding, you will see a shift in the market and the consumer's approach coming back to the condominium market. So a lot of people were wondering, with the increased average price of the price per square foot in the market, is it sustainable to buy pre-construction properties? Doesn't matter which part of the province. We did a little bit of the research and a study, and we noticed almost 62% of the properties, they have positive cash flows based on the average price of about $902 per square foot. And that's the huge sort of motivation for investors to still tap into the pre-construction. Not only they see a very minor negative cash flow, which they use it as a tax break, and also they see a price appreciation over the course of the next 5 years, which is the best rate of return on their initial investment of the 20% deposit for any of these pre-construction projects. As you can see, only a very small segment of the market, perhaps maybe total of the roughly, I would say about 10%, has higher negative cash flow of the roughly almost anywhere between about $600 to $1,000. So this really demonstrates that the pre-construction market, yes, it is sustainable. Yes, there are negative cash flows, depend on the type of the project, the location of the project. Obviously, downtown core of the Toronto has higher negative cash flows versus areas such as York Region or Simcoe or Ottawa, which they will have a positive cash flows. So let's take a look at what happened in the market for the last 6 months. We start with the Toronto, and we try to break it down in between the freehold and the condominium market. So many reports that is coming out, it talks about month over month. I have emphasized over the course of last 10 years, to my humble opinion, it's a big mistake when you compare month over month. Month over month, it simply provides you a trajectory of the market, but it does not give you a real picture of the market. Therefore, we like to always compare year to date. Because you need a good sample of at least 6 months of the market to understand if the market is on a positive trajectory or is in a decline trajectory. So if you take a look at, even with the current changes in the last 45 days in the market, the average price of the freehold in the city of Toronto is almost $1.6 million, and it has an average increase of the price of the 16%, comparing the first 6 months of the 2021 versus the 2020. Days on the market has dropped to 11 days, almost minus 35%. And a condominium market, as you can see, because it had a decline in the fall and winter of the 2020, now it's on the positive trajectory by the 2%. It's sitting at about a $700,000 average price. And there is hardly any change in terms of the days of the market. It's sitting at about 17 days. We move from Toronto to the Durham region. Durham region was the most robust region in Ontario in the last 15 months because initially at the beginning of the pandemic, consumers, they realized due to the vicinity and the proximity of the distance of the Durham region to the downtown Toronto and employment hub and employment centers across Greater Horseshoe, the values were quite down, and they really jumped at it, and they really caused a major increase in that market. That market for the first 6 months of the 2021 compared to 2020 has increased of the 38%. The average home is sitting at about $939,000, and the average days on the market is dropped to almost 8 days. The condominium market, that's another sector, which is interestingly, if you drive along the 401 going east, you will see multiple cranes and multiple activities in Durham region. And we have to also compliment the Durham region and the politician in that region that they're quite forward thinker in terms of the development that's happening right now in Pickering, in Ajax, and many part of that region. So the price has increased by 28%, again, double digit, $567,000, and 50% drop in days on the market to 10 days. We go to the York region. York region had the highest drop correction, perhaps at the beginning of the pandemic, and also coming out of the 2018 stress test, but has rebounded very nicely to almost by 28% on the same 6 months comparison. The average price is sitting at $1.4 million, and the average days on the market again dropped by half to almost 13 days. The condominium market is in one of those areas that has a really good positive cash flows, because in York region, the average pre-construction or average current condos is selling at the range of about $800 to about $900 per square foot, which is compared to the Toronto of the $1,400 is quite affordable. The condos are sitting at an average price of the $667,000, and the average days on the market is about 17 days. Simcoe County was very similar robust to the Durham region. Again, because of the proximity of the travel and the transportation of the Highway 400 coming to the employment hub, had a huge increase on a freehold segment by almost 39% average home. It's between the Simcoe County and a Barrie, which is two different district. They are combined is sitting at about $844,000. The average days on the market almost from about 27 to 28 days prior year to drop to 13 days. And the condominium market, there are tremendous amount of activity of the medium-sized boutique condominium style right now in Barrie and along the for Highway 400 going north in many of the smaller urban centers and towns. And the average condos is sitting at a $537,000, and the average days on the market is 17 days. Ottawa. Ottawa continued to be a very robust market. Ottawa, although doesn't benefit in terms of the distance to Toronto, but Ottawa by itself has become a very unique urban center. It has its own distinct characteristic. It's a city that about 2 years ago surpassed $1 million. So it has become among a mega urban center in Canada. Ottawa has found its place in the real estate market of the Canada. Is right now literally racing among the top 4 cities between Toronto, Vancouver, Ottawa, and Montreal. And the average home of the freehold between the semis, townhouse, and detached is sitting at the average price of the $741,000, which is a 35% increase. And the days on market has dropped to the 9 days. And the condominium market, which for several years lagged in Ottawa during the course of the last probably 9 months, multiple developers has launched multiple properties. And it's interesting that you will see at least about 20 to 25 cranes right now in the city of Ottawa. And the average condos is sitting at a 425 and the average days is about 12. Ottawa also benefit hugely from the best employment hub in Canada. The average household family is the highest in Canada and is one of those centers that many Canadian or many Ontarian, they made a decision during the pandemic that to make it their permanent homes. It has a great education system and health system and is close to 2 major hubs, Montreal and Toronto. And people who have made the move to Ottawa, they will benefit from the growth of the market for years to come. So this is the major topic in the last 45 days. Everybody is talking that the multiple offers are happening, but the multiple offers are, or the listings are not receiving many offers or the showing activity perhaps a drop. Is the market cooling off? Is the market aiming for a correction? The truth is, no, the market is not cooling off. The market is basically, to my humble opinion, is taking a break. Why? Because for several factors. Society focus. So as you recall, about a month ago, we entered the phase 1 of the reopening of the economy. And our reopening of the phases was entirely dependent on the vaccine rollout. Ontario and Canada overall has done a great job in terms of the vaccine rollout. And we have noticed that with the very rapid speed of the vaccination rate, the consumer's focus is more on social aspect of their life. For the last 15 to 17 months, consumers, they were locked down. They were the liberty of having the choices and the option of the traveling, shopping, entertainment, gathering was taken away from them. And right now, everybody is really feel that fatigue and tired of the mental health, and they basically rather to focus on anything else except perhaps the real estate, which was the hot topic for the last 15, 17 months. If you shift for those people that they are in the market, there is a buyer fatigue right now in the market. And the buyer fatigues come from the multiple factors, which we will talk about it at the next few slides, and also the recent announcement of the stress test. So look at what's happening in the consumers' spending with the reopening of the market. We can see the goods and services, which is primarily are the entertainment, restaurant, travel, shoppings, really nicely. It's picking up and is finally is on the positive sides rather than to be on the negative sides. So that's really demonstrate the social focus of the consumers at the moment. Affordability. So that's the buyer fatigue. The market really had a very substantial increase as we demonstrated everywhere, pretty much double digit, anywhere from about 17 to almost 40% increase in the prices. So it's very natural. Many consumers are thinking, is this market sustainable? Can I afford even to move to the suburbs area? There are other questions right now. It's coming to mind of many consumers. Prior to the COVID, many people, they made a percentage of the consumers, they made an emotional decision to move to further distance from their employment center or their hub. And now they are rethinking that decision. Uh, is it sustainable for them to travel back and forth? Is it sustainable for them to maybe change the career and find something close to their home? And if you pay attention, even the traffic flow in the last perhaps several weeks, you notice in particularly in the GTA, even in Ottawa, you will see the pattern of the consumers going back to work. So affordability is becoming the big question. Of course, buyers are hoping that the market correct itself and perhaps has the same drop as the increase that it had, but I don't think so that will ever happen. But again, affordability is becoming the biggest topic in Canada, and also is the biggest topic among the politicians, which we talked in a previous presentation. What are the solution about it? The solution is simply to supply and making sure that we have a sustainable growth in terms of the supply and the transportation to make it easy for the consumers to buy properties further from their employment center, but have easier access in terms of the traveling to those employment center. So another thing is a rising of the cost of the goods, rising the cost of the inputs, shortage of the labor. Many employees are suffering in terms of the shortage of the labor because many consumers moved out quite far from their employment center, and suddenly they decided either to take the path of the continuing education or change their employment. Insufficient demand for goods and services are offered, increasing competition, and even financing. All the combination of the above factors is really correlated to affordability. Is basically part of the buyer's fatigue. Buyer fatigue means people, the buyers are perhaps at this time, what we call it is a confused market. They are not sure what's going to happen. So stress test. Stress test was another really a blow to consumers. Yes, it was a minor. It's basically changed the affordability rate by almost about $40,000, depending on the cities and depending on where you are located or where you are planning to buy. But it's anywhere impacted from your income perspective, anywhere between about $4,000 gross annual income to $12,000. And in terms of the affordability and price tag, anywhere from about 20,000 to about 40,000. But again, it's another part of the causing a buyer fatigue and a mental stress, that understanding how they're going to navigate the future and the market. So, but let's take a look at it. What happened also in the last 45 days? Did we see a major drop in the market? Canadian market overall had a drop of only about a 7%. And if you look at the Toronto and Ottawa, two big mega market in Ontario, you will see the drop was less than 10%. But this is the drop not in prices. This is the drop in activities. That's a major difference. A lot of people, they think this was a drop in the prices. No, the prices, they were influenced depending by the neighborhood, depending by the region. But if you take a look at a cumulative price drop was only about to 3.7%, which again, another demonstration that the consumer confidence in the market is still quite high. Yes, we are now facing two category of the consumers. We are facing the sellers that they are asking this question: why I can't get 15 offers for my properties, why I can't have 50 showings for my properties. And the buyers are trying to take advantage of this momentum but the majority of the buyers are failing to take advantage of this momentum, because the truth is there is still enough demand for the supply in the market. So the demand is surpassing the supply. And unless that balance has changed and we go to the balanced market or a buyer market, the buyers will not benefit from it. Is this a crash? Is this the market falling? Absolutely not. The market is basically, as we mentioned, is a little bit confused, and it takes a period of the time that the both parties in this equation, there are only two parties in this equation, buyers and seller, to come to the realization that this is the new era, this is the new model, this is the new price point, maybe 3% drop. This is the new strategy, that the traffic flow through their homes will not be as high as March and April, and they have to accept the fact. And similar goes to the buyers. If they are hoping that they can get hundreds of thousands of dollars of the discount, it will not happen. And once the both party they come to that realization, you will see a rebound of the market and rebound of the activities, because it's a behavioral pattern. So let's take a look at, can Canadian housing market fall? So to my humble opinion, only two reasons the Canadian market may fall and correct itself majorly. One is economic factor. So what are the economic factor? Interest rate and labor market. Because of the global pandemic, because of the global rise of the real estate market momentum, because of the stimulus packages that they do are available in the market, I don't foresee any of the change of the interest rate or major economic impact in the market that's going to impact our real estate market. Another factor with the market is the immigration and reopening of our borders, and basically a flow of the immigrant that they are waiting for the last 17 and 18 months to enter to Canada. So that will not happen in terms of the economic factor. Last night, the Senate approved the Bill C-30, which is a part of the budget, and is $100 billion in growth plan. And half of that $100 billion is going to be spent in the first year, which is in 2022. And its aim really helping a lot of businesses to be sustainable, to remodel, and to basically back to a degree of the normal activities. And if you want to take a look at it from a simple factor, also consumers' behavior, consumers now are going out. Consumers are dining out. Consumers are booking the trips. Consumers are anxious to go shopping. Consumers are kind of behavior basically is an expenditure of spending their disposable cash in the market and in economy. Plus, in addition, the stimulus packages that will continue from the federal government to sustain the economy. And it's not only a Canadian issue, it's a global issue. A lot of people are questioning this, that the stimulus packages and the money, that excessive of the cash that is available out there and printing the money, in fact, by the government will hunt us later on. Yes and no. Do you prefer that the economy crash and we have high rate of unemployment, or do you prefer that the federal budget is not balanced perhaps for next 5 or 10 years? And eventually what's going to happen, yes, consumers will pay for this, but consumers will pay for this through the service fees and perhaps some changes in the tax bracket. But I personally rather this approach, and Canada has successfully done this approach in many occasions through prior crises. And I'm confident that we will navigate through it and we come out of it as before, ahead of any other countries. And one of the major boosts to our economy will be reopening of our border and the flow of the immigrants, that they will invest in Canadian economy and they will create jobs, and they'll bring funds, and investment of the fund in the Canadian economy indirectly will boost multiple sector of the economy. So look at the vaccination rate. That's another federal initiative. So yes, we were all upset. We were very proud last year during the announcement of the prior to the vaccination comes out, that basically Canada was the number one country in terms of the procurement of the vaccine. As soon as the election in the US was done, our hope shattered, perhaps sometime from the January to mid-March, because US administration decided to block the flow of the vaccine because they were holding the power in terms of the manufacture side of it, and they aimed the vaccination rate for their own population, which is natural and completely understanding. Perhaps this is a lesson for Canada to learn, to have a vaccination manufacturer, not only the one that is going to be open in Quebec by October of this year. There is apparently talk of the investment also in Ontario, about $1 billion that will reopen one in Ontario. So, but look what happened. From March to now, Canada has become, as of June 17, the number one country in terms of the vaccination rate. We have the share of the population with the first dose, which is roughly almost about 76%, and we are almost edging past 30% for a double dose. We passed the United Kingdom, we passed even the US, and in many parts of the world, that maybe they had a better measure in terms of the lockdown and containment of the virus, such as Australia, such as Malaysia, but they are now suffering because they didn't focus on the vaccination rate. And even with the Delta variants, the studies in the recent days shows that the countries that they have a better vaccination rate, hardly they have any issues with the Delta variants, and United Kingdom is the best proof because the Delta variants really spread quite fast in the United Kingdom, but they have no issue with it. So if you are not vaccinated, this is not a market or economic advice. Please vaccinate yourself because you are responsible not only for your family, for your colleague, for your community, but you owe it to your country, to Canada, to make sure that we sustain our economy. So this is a very great news. Canada, once again, came out of it on the top. We should be all proud of it. So this is something that eventually we have to pay attention to it. So consumers' confidence is up, the consumers' behavior is going to be great, but eventually with the increase in the cost of the goods and manufacture, we will face the inflation. But the interest rate is low and the people are spending tremendous amount of the money and they're out in the market. And the suppliers or the manufacturer, due to broken chain of the supply because of the COVID, because of the transportation issues, because of the containment issues of the 14 days of the quarantine, even for the shipments, because of sometimes in some countries when we receive the shipment, the manufacturer has been shut down. So the cost of the good is gone drastically up, and this will cause the inflation. So eventually, one of the only measure that the federal government will have to eventually increase the interest rate. And that probably will happen sometimes in the mid of the 2020. And when they do it in the mid 2022, and then you will see a slight increase. So when you increase the interest rate, you by default force the suppliers to drop their prices so you balance the inflation. Federal government and provincial government, they always like to see the inflation rate at the rate of about 1.8 to 2%. Right now is edging close to about 3%. But this is a very temporary issue because once the supply chain really regain its momentum of the flow and be very smooth, we shouldn't have this problem. So once the interest rate goes up, what's going to happen to our market? This is exactly what's going to happen to our market. Historically, last 10 years in Canada, we have done close to about a 450 to 470 transaction. In Ontario collective, if you take a look at the Toronto Real Estate Board, Ottawa Real Estate Board, BIDAR, and all larger sort of a board, probably we have done about 150 to 160 at the peak and probably about 140 on a normal average. So we will probably see a very sustainable model to 2016 and 17 model, maybe even slightly higher than that. In Toronto, we probably will see about a 90,000 transaction on an annual basis. In Ottawa, we will see probably about 17. And in a Simcoe County, we probably will see about 95 to 11,000 transaction. The drop in the number of the transaction, again, doesn't mean the drop in the prices because we are still in a seller market. Even if you take a look at the model of the 2016 to 18, we never had a massive excessive of the supply because the supply is not there. Because we have the flow of the newcomers coming, we have the also increase in the younger generation that they are now in the market to buy properties. So unless we address the supply issue, the prices will not drop. One thing good happened out of the COVID, which I personally am very happy, it's really created an equilibrium of the wealth among the other cities. London, Ontario, Ottawa, Durham, Simcoe County, Hamilton, many part of the Durham region, they basically benefited that the value of their properties went up, and it's actually caused that many people to move to those areas. What the provincial and federal government right now, to my humble opinion, should have a mandate to create a proper transportation system that to make the commute going back and forth till further commercial development or employment hub center in those areas. Many people talk about basically what's going to happen right now. Do I have the ability to work from home? Everybody was under the impression of that. Yes, I go by further outside of the GTA or further outside of the Ottawa, or even in an area such as Barrie, going further north, because I do have the ability to work from home. Yes, it is true, but I do believe many of the employers at the moment, they are not ready for such a drastic shift because of the productivity, because of the performance, because of the control measure. Maybe 5 or 10 years from now, they will adopt such a model, or perhaps they will look at relocating their operation center to the hubs that they are more attractive to the employees. Because right now, majority of the major companies, they do have an issue of the shortage of the laborers. Very interesting. We're sitting at almost about 8% unemployment rate, but we do have an issue because also that's a part of the buyers' fatigue and mental confusion that should they do. COVID really caused a lot of people, many consumers that prioritize their priorities. And one of those is perhaps a better job and better style of living. Um, I do see for the next probably 17 to 18 months, everybody will be forced by their employer to come back to work. Maybe a hybrid model of the maybe 4 days from work and 1 day from home. But I don't see for a near future that the total hybrid or virtual model will be sustainable. Some companies such as IBM or Google, they have been practicing this for years, and have the system and model to do it. It's not just only a computer at home and a Zoom. There are many operation concerns behind those. So what will happen to those individuals? Talking about the change in the market, recreational properties such as cottage countries, I'll see an adjustment to their prices because I do believe many people made an emotional decision going to those areas and they totally don't understand the style of living in that area, particularly those that they have the younger generation of the family members, teenager that they live with them. And there will be also an adjustment in terms of some prices in the areas that many people that they moved quite far from the employment hub. And it's all depend, those adjustment going to be major or minor. I do believe it's going to be minor. Perhaps you're talking about maybe 10% adjustment in the price in those areas. So the key will be the proximity to the major hub center. So Ottawa by itself, it's a unique city. There will be hardly any major impact. Durham Region, majority of part of the Durham Region, I would say, Pickering, Ajax, Whitby, Oshawa, there will be hardly any major changes. Barrie, very similar because both region, they got a 45 minutes traveling time to the employment hub. Further west, there There will be maybe some adjustment in Windsor, some adjustment in London, Ontario, some adjustment in north part of the Simcoe County, such as Aurelia, and of course with the cottage country. So Remax Hallmark year-to-date update number for the last 6 months, we had an amazing, robust activity. We had between all of our region almost 248,000 showing. We have done so far close to about 14,000 transaction, surpassing probably the half a year of the 2020. We believe we probably land close to about 25,000 transaction this year. Compliment to all of our practitioner, all of our realtor. They're the best in the industry that you can find. New listing, we have successfully sold over 10,000 listing across all the region that we practice. Our average days on the market across from Ottawa to Toronto, Durham, Simcoe, and western part of the province is about 17 and a half days. Our average price within the Hallmark region that we practice is up by about 15%. And we have accomplished about $10.6 billion of the volume. When you take a look at the perspective of the volume, we are the number one independent real estate Remax brokerage in the global market. And in Ontario, moving last year, almost 24,000 transactions at $14 billion, literally represent about 15% of the Ontario's market share. So I'm here to answer any of your question. I'm all yours. I hope you enjoyed it. We are at the beginning of the summer. The summer is going to be quite interesting for all of us because we have the opportunity to go out and enjoy and meet friends and meet family after almost 15 months. So enjoy it. And I hope you enjoy this short presentation. I'm here to answer any of your question. Shant, question, please.
First of all, thank you, Steve. That was amazing. That was great. Lots of information. I just asked the question. I'm waiting for people to respond. Actually, there is one from Andrew. I think Andrew Cohen from Aurora. He had asked, why does, there's one of the slides that you showed the sales, how it was higher than normal. So he goes, why does it say that 2020 sales were higher than normal? Number of transactions were way down in 2020 in every market I've seen in the stats. That's what he's asking.
I'm not clear, Andrew, about your question. If you can repeat your question, I'm not really clear about your question, but the number of the transaction in 2021 in the first...
In 2020, you had a slide, I think it was third or fourth, it was all these bars, and he was asking, saying, why does it say that 2020 sales were higher than normal? Number of transactions were way down in 2020 in every market I've seen.
We'll
get Andrew, if you're still listening, please clarify your question.
Yeah, Andrew, you can call me after the presentation. I'll be more than happy to talk about it with you. I'm confused with your question.
Okay, so we have a question from Ravi Singh, and he asks, the cost of the pandemic will be paid by taxpayers. How do you see that affecting household wealth and spending in home values?
Well, eventually somebody got to pay for this. Government is a large mega corporation. Similar to any other businesses, they got to have an income and they have expenses. So obviously they have spent more than their income in the last 15, 16 years. So how they going to recuperate all these spending the money? They basically mainly will be through the services. And services, what we're talking about. Imagine you get your driving license renewal. Imagine your passport renewal. Imagine the airport fees. Imagine the cities that they're going to impose levies that they're basically going to be increased. And of course, also some adjustment to the tax rate has to happen. Otherwise, if you truly want to balance the budget, and it's not going to happen in the next 5 years. This budget or whoever going to be in the power in the federal government probably will take about 10 years or at least more than one term of the prime minister to balance this budget, because this was the biggest blow in any advanced country in terms of the stimulus packages, and they did not have any other alternative. We are lucky that basically the CMHC and the government funding really the back secure the financial institutions such as the five banks to not stop lending. So that was the encouragement that CMHC caused it, and they really bought back many mortgages and they free some assets with the banks. Uh, in terms of the impact on the real estate and homeowners, of course, there will be some impact. Would we have any robust markets such as 2020 and 2021 in the future? Ravi, absolutely not. You got to remember, in a historical 10-year cycle or 15-year cycle, these kind of phenomena happens once or twice. Either a phenomena of the going crazy on the market the way we had it, or a phenomena of the drop in the market. But I do believe our market on a historical side, when you take a look at it as a sample, doesn't matter bigger markets such as Ottawa or Toronto. Yes, maybe we won't do over 100,000 transactions on an annual basis, but we will do about 85,000 to 90 transactions on an annual basis. So our market will be sustainable unless there is a major drastic to the labor market and interest rate. Interest rate, I can confidently tell you, never going to happen in at least my lifetime. Those era of the high interest rate are gone, and the labor market with the flow of the immigrant, I'm pretty much confident that will stay sustainable.
Amazing. Next question's from Vincent Vomaro. Do you foresee a boom in condo prices in Toronto once immigration and borders open up?
Absolutely. I will see the condo market is going to gain momentum more and more. As I mentioned, the average price between the freehold properties to a condo has a spread almost by about $300,000, $267,000 when you average it out. So therefore, there is no other alternative for people that they want to enter in the market. That's for pure buyer that actually wants to use the condo for personal use. That's number one. Number two, Benjamin Tal from CIBC last week made a great comment. Somebody asked him, oh, we see more rental, more people are renting rather than buying, because right now they're thinking, okay, renting makes more sense than buying for the first time. And his comment, I love him, I have tremendous respect for him, and he was last year at Hallmark. We interviewed him and we are planning to bring him back. He basically said, we need the rental market. The reason we need the rental market, because the rental market, it's going to actually create a sustainability on the buyer's market. It's going to make sure that the buyer market doesn't go out of the control. So it's lower this demand of the buyer market. So, but because the rental market is going to be a very robust, good rental market, then I see a big flow of the investor, continuous big flow of the investor buying the condominium market. And you have to look at the condominium market, what's happening. A lot of people make a mistake. They think, okay, the cash flow, we talk about the cash flow. The positive cash flow maximum is going to be $1,000, which is maybe $12,000 a year by the time you pay the taxes on it. It's not a major. A lot of people with the pre-construction condominium are banking on the appreciation of the price growth. The average price growth in Ontario in the last 50 years, when you average it out, it's been at about 7%. So if somebody says I buy a condo for $500,000 and every year has a $35,000 price growth, in 5 years, I got almost about $170,000 price growth. So basically it's a positive growth, and basically it makes sense to have that investment done.
Thank you, Steve. Next question is from Sean Tasse from Ottawa. Is there anything we can do to address the supply issue? If not us, who and how can it be addressed?
Great question. We talked about this extensively last time, Sean, but I'll recap it again. The biggest issues are policies. We have a broken system of the making decision in terms of the development in at least province of Ontario that I'm quite familiar with it. We got cities, we got cities, we got region, we got province, we got federal. So everybody has a different approach and different mindset in terms of the development. That's one issue. We don't have a uniform policy, such as a European model, such as an example, if you're allowing the condominium or high density growth and a certain arteries or a certain street, doesn't matter which part of the city of a city in Ontario, we should have a very uniform system. If we allow 10-story, is a 10-story. We see a complete mix and mashes of 30-story, 10-story, depend the developer how much they can influence these four level of the government. That's one problem with the Development Act. And the Development Act is kept rewriting it, rather than completely write a brand new act based on a current needs that we need. That's one issue. Second issue is the process of the approval. Once you don't have a clear path in terms of the development, guess what? You get caught in a red tape of the government for approval. So as a developer, let's say, imagine we buy a piece of land, and if it takes us 3 to 4 years to get an approval for a high density project, we're not talking about a single density project. We are not talking about a one house or a two semis. We're talking about mass densities project. Then the cost of that development is being passed to the consumers. That's the second problem. So government regulation, the process. Thirdly, levies that we have that basically is killing the developer in terms of the supply. So almost 1/3 of the cost of a condominium project, if it's average $900, it's gone through the levies, park dedication, and basically absorbed by the process. A lot of people, they think a developer, when sell a condo for a $900 per square foot, they have $400 per square foot profit. The profit currently in the condominium pre-construction market is sitting at 125 to 240 per square foot. Depend on the project, depend on how smart the developer was in terms of buying the project and in terms of how much density they will get. So these are the government approval process issues. Then it comes creating Ontario housing, affordable housing. And so the government obviously has proved that they have no ability to build those and manage those. Interestingly, the government across Ontario and across the cities, Ottawa community housing, Toronto community housing, they're selling their asset because they fail to manage them and maintain them properly. So they're selling their valuable asset rather than actually investing or partnering with a developer. A developer will do affordable housing as long as they get incentive from the government, such as perhaps free crown land, such as perhaps getting a very attractive loan, tax break for several years. I'm talking about 15, 20, 30 years. That's another issue. Third issue, transportation. So if we fix the first two issues and allow the developer go further from the expensive hub, built homes, the issue right now is the transportation. People do not want to be in a traffic for 3 hours, 2 hours a day, commuting back and work from home to work. We have failed miserably in terms of the transportation. Ottawa so far has done a great job with LRT, and it's basically starting early, but in a big hub such as Toronto, the transportation is going to be a major, major issue for years to come. So those are the three elements. And if we don't really work on those three elements, we never can. What can we do as a practitioners or even as a member of the community? I guess we have to raise our concern and voice with our member of the parliaments and local city council. And also as a consumers, the consumers also is at fault too. Take a look at, for example, the process of the approval. You want to build a 4 semis in a certain neighborhood, the entire neighborhood goes against you. We got so many properties on the old official plan, 50-foot lot, 60-foot lot, 70-foot lot. Do we really need those large lots? Why we don't start to increase the densities in those neighborhoods? Perhaps a 70-foot lot can become 2 35-foot lots, or a 50-foot lot can become 2 25. Those are easier to increase the densities in the neighborhood, and it will not impact the issue of the transportation, because we have excessive of the land in this old pocket, but the consumers are also taking in a stand. No, I don't want increased densities in my neighborhood because it will deteriorate the value of my home. So there are multiple issues right now on the table, and consumers need to be educated, and the government needs to make a change of the policies.
All right. So next question is from Diane Jacobs. Will property taxes increase sooner than later because of the mega increase in housing prices? The assessments are forecast over 4 years. Do you think cities will reassess sooner?
Uh, okay, the city has the City of Toronto, for example, has a major issue. They have major issue in terms of operation. We talked about this also previously, privatization. A lot of people are against privatization. But take a look at the garbage pickup in City of Toronto. East side of Yonge is private, west side of Yonge is not private. Okay? Unless we have the business approach, a business operational approach of running our cities, that who can be more competitive in terms of the cost, which save taxpayers money and cause not our property tax goes up. And the only solution in any developed countries has been privatization. Privatization caused multiple companies, multiple corporations bid for the same job and basically offer a competitive rate versus non-private versus having a unionized work do that. I'm not against union for the record, but that's one of the issues. Your question, increases of a property tax, somebody got to pay for it. If you're increasing the density, that means we need to provide the services to those increase of the densities. Increase of the densities, they require increase of the manpower. Increase of the manpower require increase of the equipment. And if you are increasing the density, decreasing increase of the pollution and the traffic, and those needs to be maintained and managed and clean and serviced. Therefore, yes, your property tax for sure will go up. Consider that absolutely. In US, the property tax model is quite different, particularly, for example, in state of Texas, the property tax is based on the value of your home. It's a very strict formula percentage every time the transaction happens is based on that. And frankly, I think it's a fair property tax system compared to here, because it's based on the value and the size. Here, the assessors are all over the map. And if you take a look at some homes which are worth millions of dollars, their property tax compared to a home that is basically the value is not there or the size is not there, maybe a small difference. But in short answer to your question, yeah, property tax for sure will go up in the next 5 years. It's already started going up in the last 2 years.
All right. Next question actually is a simple one. It's from Cyrus Zandian. Can we do door knocking?
Cyrus, with the reopening of the phases, yes, you're allowed, because it's a gathering of the 5 to 10 people outside is allowed. So if your door knocking is hopefully it's maybe gathering of the 2 or 3 people total. No open houses yet. No open houses yet. No agent open house. No public open house yet, because it may cause more gathering, more than 5 or 10 people at any given point of the time. So that's a risk.
All right. We have a question here from Brandon. It's kind of, again, with the property tax. So it says, Steve, taxpayers will need to pay for all this spending, and the government is considering taxing principal residents for additional revenue. In your opinion, how will this impact the market?
I don't think so it's ever going to happen, the principal resident tax. I think it's a political topic. I don't think so it's going to happen. So I really have no further research on this. Whoever come up with this idea of the taxing the principal resident on their principal property is basically sign a death sentence for their political party, because it's not going to sit well with the Canadian. 70% of the Canadian are homeowners. This morning, I read an article about one political party that was basically mentioning that if they are elected, they will guarantee the drop of the price of the real estate market. That statement by itself, it's quite bold. And first of all, it cannot happen because nobody controls the market. Market is controlled by supply and demand, unless the government interfered drastically by increase of the major interest rate. Is not only about the real estate guys. Interest rate will impact many industries, many investment, many financing, manufacture, goods and services. So these kind of a statement about taxing principal residents or guaranteeing the drop in the prices in the houses are just political promises. So don't pay attention to it.
All right. Next question from Yaya Dardashti. For the condo market, would it be true if we said some regions out of the GTA have seen a bigger increase in their prices in the last 12 months, whereas prices of condos downtown did not increase the same way or even decrease because of the oversupply?
You're absolutely right, Yaya. And one of the reasons, if you pay attention, for years, our beautiful country, Canada, we paid attention only to three cities: Vancouver, Toronto, and Montreal. And one of the topic in the last 6 months, which is really a bizarre comment, it was basically uh, why, how the rest of the country became Toronto and Vancouver. That's a really a sad statement. So many of our part of our province, they were actually, their value should have been appreciated over the last 10 years, but didn't, because they were heavily under the influence of the Toronto or Vancouver, the hybrid, more robust market. So the appreciation in those areas, such as Durham, such as Ottawa, such as Simcoe County, of course, is a lot higher. Now the question becomes, if the market correct itself or change, do those market will be impacted bigger than the, let's say, compared to Toronto? Naturally, yes. You got to remember, a hub, a core, always get impacted less. Why? Because it's proximity to transportation, proximity to the employment hub. But is it going to be a major impact if the market ever corrects itself? No, I don't think so. And also, consumers got to pay attention to this. So we just talked about it. The market activity dropped by, let's say, 10%, and the prices dropped by about 4%. But we had an increase of the 30% in the prices. Let's assume the prices also dropped by 10%. You still have 20% increase. So I think consumers are also got to be really smart. We can't be greedy all the time. As long as we have a double-digit positive cash flow, or even single-digit. Many advanced and developed countries in G20, they don't see the model of the growth that we ever had. They have 7-8% normal rate of the increase. And I think if I am a homeowner in Canada and I have a 7 to 10% increase rate in my homes, I should be quite happy.
All right. So next question comes from Al Sadeghi. How do you see the luxury market and its future basis on the material? Oh, sorry, my fault. How do you see the luxury market and its future basis on the material and labor costs next year?
So labor costs for construction is gone up quite drastically. If we were able, at least about by 30-35%, is a supply chain now. So lumber was a big factor. Why the supply chain disrupted? Closure of the plant due to the COVID, health issues, containment of the shipment for 14 days at the port, at the customs, restriction. So once the global economy through the vaccination come back to a normal process of the production, you will see an adjustment on the cost of the construction. But currently, at the moment, absolutely, you're right. The cost of the construction on luxury homes is gone up crazy. Can you justify that cost of the construction plus the increase the cost of the infill land and come with the end product that is a sellable? Depend on where the property is being developed or built. Some pocket that they are really have low inventory, absolutely you can, but some pocket that they have higher inventory and higher infill properties under construction, it's a dangerous market to play.
All right. And one last question. Unfortunately, I don't recognize the name. So it says, what about a modified controlled open house where the door is locked? People are asked to sign in with personal information and sanitize, COVID verification, etc. One couple at a time.
This is called open house by appointment. As long as you don't put a sign in front of the property, you can advertise it through the social media, open house by appointment, that's fine. The problem becomes right now it's not permittable. Imagine, yes, they come one by one through the door by appointment, but imagine now suddenly you have 5 cars parked on the street of the open house and you're causing concern for the neighborhood. So be careful how you do that. So therefore, it's not permittable. Therefore, advertise it through the social media. People can book and by appointment, and then it's sort of a showing by appointment. At the moment, all the board, they have advised that they will not recommend such a open house.
That's it, Steve. Thank you very much. If you have any parting words, it's to you.
Guys, thank you very much. Enjoy the summer. Stay safe, stay healthy. Spend some time with your family and friends. And we have exciting news for you in coming months. We are inviting a couple of great speakers, one Benjamin Tal, one Greg Alexander, the ex-TD economist, who is right now for chief economist with Deloitte, and other fantastic growth news for you guys. We look forward to see you guys all soon through our golf tournament, or hopefully as soon as the permits are issued, baseball and barbecue gathering. Stay safe, be healthy, and if you're not vaccinated, get vaccinated. Done. Thank you.